Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
It is beginning to be a very busy time in the great outdoors with fall coming up right around the corner here and hunting seasons opening up left and right. We've got the archery season opening up this weekend too, so perfect time to catch up with our good friend Mr. Jake Bolks. Jake, how you doing this morning, buddy?
It is another nice Thursday, nice and sunny, and another good day, so I'm doing pretty good.
Absolutely, man. Hey, before we get to a little some bow hunting talk here with the opener coming up here, we got a couple questions from listeners here this morning. First off, a fishing one. Texter had asked, is it all right to use a smallmouth bass as bait for muskie? Example would be soaking it in the water with a large bobber. And what are the rules in general of using live bait?
Yeah, so when it comes to game fish and using them for bait, you can use it for bait, but it has to be following the length limit restrictions and like the daily bag. So if you wanted to use a smallmouth, then hypothetically, or not even hypothetically, but legally, you'd have to catch that fish on that lake that day, and it would have to be a 14-inch smallmouth bass unless it's a lake with like a different size regulation for smallmouth, and you would count it as part of your daily bag as well. So I don't know about a 14-inch bass being on a bobber though, so it'd be a hard thing to use for bait potentially. You can't just catch like a 6-8-incher and throw her on there. Right,
exactly. So okay, there we go. And then we got a late one come in here about with bears here. What are the reasons behind pulling the 2 teeth on a black bear once harvested?
So, I guess, unfortunately, I'm not the biologist. I haven't dug in too deep on the exact reason for it. I know a lot of it has to do with age and health.
Okay.
For the reason they collect them. It's just another way, we do it a lot with fur-bearing animals, otters, bobcats, fishers. It's a good way, just in general, because it's hard to go and just grab a bear and test it, or even find car kill ones and do some research on them because they're obviously in different shapes. So, as part of like the regulations and hunting processes, they just basically use it as a way to just gather some data. And in this case, it's I think it's primarily like age and some of the health of the bear.
Gotcha. All right. So with the opener coming up this weekend with bow season, question I had, Jake, was, so we know you can use your compound bow. You got crossbows out there. For I guess a reminder too, if you have like an archery license but you want to go to a crossbow, you got to get the crossbow license, but it's like $3 if you already have an archery license, correct?
Right. It's just, I think they call it like a archery or a crossbow upgrade, depending on which one you buy first. So
okay,
$3 in addition, and then you can hunt with both of them. So.
And that was kind of my next question: is it if I get both of those, could one day I decide to go with my compound bow, then the next day go with a crossbow? Can you have both of them on you, or what's the rules with that?
Yeah, so basically you could switch them off every day. You could do one in the morning, one in the evening. However you want to do it, that's fine. You can bring them both out in the stand or the blind with you if you want. The key to it is that, in Wisconsin we have an archery season where you get your one archery buck tag and how many ever harvest antlerless tags, and then you have your gun. So it doesn't matter what weapon you're using, respectively, as long as it's archery or as long as it's gun, you just get one tag. So it's not like you get 2 buck tags now that you have an archery and a crossbow. You don't get 2 buck tags or gun tags because you're using a muzzleloader and a rifle. It's like you get one gun, one bow. Whichever one you harvest it with is fine. It just counts towards that one harvest authorization.
How busy is like the opening weekend of bow season for you guys? Or I mean, because it's still fairly warm out there. So,
oh yeah.
I mean, is there still a lot of hunters that go out there? Or is it a little bit later on when it starts to pick up a little bit?
I would say it's definitely probably the busiest weekend for like September, unless the weather really. Everyone, myself included, is excited to go out there, or you've been running your food plots, or you've been out scouting and running cameras, so you want to get out there the first chance you get. So we do tend to see a few more hunters this opening weekend, and then there might be a little dip in the next couple weekends, especially if it's hot, because there's just the deer are still kind of more nocturnal and such. But then it'll pick up for sure in October. But if the weather, unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be 80 for the next week. But say it did drop to 60s during the day, 40s in the night, then we might see some animals moving a little bit more.
Jake, with bow season, maybe just a couple of reminders or clarifications too. Say you hit one and you're tracking, and it goes on somebody else's property. What's the proper way to go about that? Is it because if you shot it on yours, you can go on that property? Do you still need the landowner's permission? How should a hunter go about that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question and a good reminder. So in Wisconsin, private property is pretty well restricted unless you have prior authorization to be on private property, whether it's like a closed public land, like closed county land, where it's actually like they have it marked as closed, or it's private property, which in most cases it's private property. You have to have permission from that landowner or the person that manages that property to go on there. So there's no law that exempts someone to break, the trespassing rule in order to track a deer or an animal, or for law enforcement for that matter to go track a deer or track an animal. So I know we've talked about it before, so if people are listening and this sounds repetitive, I apologize, but it's one of the most important things is that before you go hunting, even if you don't have the best relationship with your neighbors, it's a good idea to try to at least swing by and explain that you're hunting and tell them what your plan is, and if a deer goes across, ask them if it's all right to get it, or if they would prefer if you would call or text them or whatnot. Because most landowners don't want a deer just to rot on their property and stuff like that. So most landowners will allow you, even if you're not the best buds, to go get it, but they want some sort of, the respect to have that hunter give them a call or give them a text or do whatever they ask for prior to them going on their property.
So I might as well ask you this because I feel like we're going to get this a lot throughout hunting season here, so we might as well maybe hit it up here. The whole drone question again, drones, but also, is it legal to use dogs to track, like if you hit a deer and track the blood trail of that deer?
Yeah, so nothing's changed too much from last year on all of that. So if you got a good understanding of drones and dogs from last year, you should be comfortable operating it this year. But dogs are still legal. You just can't have firearms with you. Drones are still legal. It's just there's a lot more nuance to it. What I try to tell everyone is that if you're going to recover a deer with a drone, especially if it's your own deer, you need to really separate yourself from the hunting process and the finding process, as in finding using the drone. So there's no reason to have your gun anywhere near you or anything like that. You have to have a good justifiable reason why the deer is dead. You can't use a drone to find a deer if you don't have good blood. If you don't think that deer is dead, then you shouldn't be using a drone because you're basically hunting with the aid of an aircraft at that point. But if you shot it and you got a lot of blood, or there's bubbles, or there's whatever that implies that deer is probably dead, but it's in a thicket, or it probably ran for a while and you're having trouble locating where it went. If you can justify why it's dead and you're separating yourself from the hunting process, those are all different things that wardens take into account when we're checking people and making sure that they're not using it for scouting or tracking or something more nefarious than just trying to recover a dead deer.
That's
and I would really just, if you're going to do it, especially if you're going to do it in a business aspect, I would encourage them to call the local warden. I get calls on it every year, and it's good just to kind of talk through it because we have a big, kind of like an outline on what wardens are looking at and what's good, what's bad, and it's good to talk through it with your local warden so we're all on the same page of what you're doing when you're out there.
Yeah, because it seems like that could be kind of a subjective decision that could create a little hard feelings between the hunter and the warden.
It definitely could be. In our like guidance, there's a lot of there's a lot of examples of there's nothing that's super black and white except for things like you can't use it while you're hunting, you can't use it to aid in your hunt, or you can't use, if your drone has a spotlight on it, you can't use that spotlight after 10 o'clock at night to identify dead deer or live deer or anything, because that breaks the shining law. So there are some black and white, but there are a lot of there's a lot of guidance on how to help a hunter or a drone operator separate themselves from the hunting process. And what we look at, okay, you're clearly not using this legally because you can justify why you think the deer is dead, and you don't have a gun, and you're not the hunter of the deer, and all these different things that can help us differentiate between legal and illegal use.
Jake, you mentioned, I was just actually going to ask you the shining law there too, because I got to imagine this is probably, big time too, where everybody's driving around for that. Can you just kind of maybe just to give us a little bit of a reminder of what those are?
Yeah. So pretty simple in the sense of for most of the year, except from September 15th through December 31st, so the end of the year. So anytime besides the fall, you can shine for deer year round. Any time of the day, any time of the night, and as long as you're on a legal road, you can shine the ditches, shine the fields. And we strongly encourage you not to be shining people's houses or cattle or horses or stuff like that. But you can go do it from September 15th through the end of the year. You cannot shine deer from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. So shining deer, is using a spotlight is what most people think of. But even something to the effect of you're going out hunting, it's 4 a.m, you see some deer in the field, so you turn your truck lights to see what you got out there. Even if it's kind of unintentional, or not unintentional, but even if you're not doing it in a nefarious way, if you deliberately turn your truck lights to shine deer at 4 or 5 in the morning during the ban, then not only are you shining wild animals during the close hours, but you probably, if you're going hunting, you probably have a weapon in your car, so that'd be a crime now for shining while in possession of a firearm or bow or weapon. So just something to be cognizant about.
Yeah, that's a good reminder.
A lot of this, yeah, and a lot of it stems from, just historical poaching activity in the nights, and that's just what a lot of people do and what we're out watching for. And if you get pulled over for it, or if you make a mistake, we can tell if it's an accident, or you didn't know, or ignorance, or if it's someone that's up to illegal poaching activity. So we're pretty good at fleshing that out.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any more, intern? You're good?
No.
Okay. So,
I'm good. It's interesting listening to this, because I'll tell you hear that shining, and some guys have it perfected, and others just do it for fun. And are you in violation? You better know.
I think it's a good reminder too with the time limits from 10 p.m. and into the morning during hunting season too.
Yeah, and there are a few counties, Buffalo, Chippewa, and I think Eau Claire wants to, but I don't think they have yet. But some counties can make I think Manitowoc or Sheboygan has it, where they can make a county ordinance that restricts the timing as well. So some of them are a little bit earlier, like 9 or 9:30. So just something to be aware of when you're in different counties.
Absolutely.
Shining's fun. I got nothing against it. There's some really good people that do it and stuff, and it's a fun pastime and tradition, but it's just you got to follow the rules. Ruining it for everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some of those lights they use are bright enough to light up a baseball field.
100%. Well, and that's the other thing is that's why I kind of mentioned on it. Sometimes we get complaints, and some farmers or landowners won't even keep your shining in their fields, but it's the fact that they don't turn the lights off when they go by houses, or they shine cattle, and the cattle get all spooked, or the horses get spooked at 1 or 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whatever, 8 o'clock, and that's where we get extra calls for people kind of being disorderly for their property.
Probably where half those UFO calls come from, thinking somebody's getting abducted. So
probably is, like you said, those bright lights. When someone points those up to the sky, and all of a sudden you see white lights flying around, you're not familiar with it, it does look pretty interesting.
Yep. He's Jake Bolks, our conservation warden friend.